Coming up next, To Kill a Mockingbird, Part 3. Hey everybody, and welcome back to Bookin It. I am, of course, your humble and eloquent host, Cooper Cobbs, and joining me today are our three panelists, Matthew Killingsworth,
Howdy.
Tanner Lewis,
Hello.
and Isaiah Reggie.
Hi.
How are you guys doing today?
Pretty good.
Very good.
Doing great.
Well, today is Part 3 of To Kill a Mockingbird, guys.
That it is.
Mm-hmm.
What to talk about? So let's start with this. Is there anything that you guys are dying to say before we start off kind of going through the book again? Take that as a no. Let's move on.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let's talk about Atticus some more. So, fast forward to that scene, the Christmas scene when they're at Finch's Landing or whatever.
Okay.
So this is where we're talking about where Jack, Atticus's brother,
Oh, I know where you're going here. I see where you're going.
Spanks Scout or punishes Scout for some reason. So, do you think Jack was right in doing this? And do you think that Atticus neglected to punish his kids there, or Scout there, particularly?
I think he did it. Well, to answer this, I think Uncle Jack spanked her because she was cursing, and he had already given her like his whole little speech about how whenever he's around she can't curse because he hates cursing and stuff like that.
Good for him.
And yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead and say no. I don't think it's all right to spank other people's kids, unless obviously unless you know that their parents unless you're basically like another parent figure to them. I guess that you already know that they're gonna that their parents trust you fully and stuff. I don't know. It'd have to be a very specific situation, but I'm gonna go ahead and say no for that.
I'd just say it depends on who you are. Like, it was their uncle, technically. Like, they were family, so, I mean, I actually don't know.
So does that mean you think you think just because he's their uncle that it's okay? Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it's more okay than a random person or a friend or something. Unless, like, the parents specifically say that you can, like...
Which he didn't.
Yeah. So I guess in this case, I'd say no. Like, he shouldn't have. But it just depends on what happens, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think about Atticus? Do you think throughout the book he neglected to punish his kids? And is that a bad thing?
Kind of. His form of punishment wasn't a spanking. Usually, it was usually a stern talking to, which they seemed to dread just as much as a spanking because they never wanted to be on Atticus's bad side for even a second. So I think it worked for him pretty effectively, and they learned a lot. And his arguably strange way of parenting seemed to work for that specific family, I guess. I mean, I personally think he did a good job, even if that wasn't entirely normal way of doing everything.
Well, again, he did, basically let Scout say whatever she wanted. Like, there's that scene where Uncle, like you were talking about earlier, with Uncle Jack,
Right.
where she, says the D word or something like that. And he's like, don't ever say that in front of me again. And Jack's like, she'll outgrow it. Atticus is like, she'll outgrow it. She's been cussing fluently for, a week now. I was like,
Yeah, that's where I thought you were going when you were starting to bring this up. Yeah, that is... it's definitely different. But she did not cuss as much towards the end, so... I don't know.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sander, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I guess it just goes back to what I've said in a previous episode about it really depends on, the family or the person. I mean, it worked for Scout and Jim. Their love for their father definitely, I guess you would say, outgrew their love for just about anything else, whether it's a habit or speech. And the talking to, really got to them. Whereas I feel for some other kids, they're just put on their rock hard face and don't do anything. They really felt it, which is why I don't think that he really didn't punish them. I just think that his punishment wasn't atypical.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think we talked about it a little bit last episode. About what was I gonna say? Oh my goodness.
Real quick, Cooper. There's something else I was
Go
wanting
ahead.
to say
Yeah,
on
I gotta.
the
I forgot to
or
remember what I
on
said.
on the scout cussing fluently for a week thing, that how he didn't really seem to address it. But I mean, when you think about it, like I have just been right now, you can scout obviously knows that it's wrong, because like she's always nervous when she's like cussing around her father. So it's not like I feel like that Atticus would have made sure that even if she didn't know it was wrong, he would have told her that. So that's why I think that, I don't know, it's not like he just doesn't care. He just had his own way of taking care of it, is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Sure. I remember we talked about last episode. Remember now about how Atticus never spanked Jim, and Jim said that, and he said
Yes.
everyone wanted him
Yeah.
to start now, and I think it meant a lot to Jim, right? And this book is a lot about Jim realizing things, and then Scout being one step behind him, but you as the reader kind of being able to put two and two together, right?
Right.
So Scout really never understands, I don't think, fully why it meant so much to Jim that Atticus never spanked him or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
To Scout, I guess.
Because
Go ahead.
he just treated him like a man.
Exactly.
And that made him, the fact that he got a little taste of what it was like to be respected and treated like a man, like a full-grown man, he loved it, and he wanted to make sure that's the way it stayed the rest of his life, which I think played into his thought process and a lot of the decisions he made from that point forward
Exactly.
for the rest of the
Yeah,
story.
but to Scout, she never really understood that. She's like, it's just Atticus' way of doing things.
I mean, but then again, her biggest example, like arguably, was probably Jim.
Right.
And
Exactly.
Even more so than Atticus. So if Jim was making good decisions and showing her how to do that, then she was gonna follow.
Yeah. And again, I mean, towards the end of this book, after the trial, Atticus literally kind of, I don't know, maybe he's just depressed or something like that, but he kind of fades out as a father, and Jim is forced to kind of step into that role. And even, like, I think that Atticus said to Scout, you'll mind him when he's able to make you mind him, or something like that. And that was, I don't know. Like, Jim he's a great guy, sure, but he's not a father, exactly.
No.
Isaiah, Tanner, you have any thoughts on this before we move on?
No, I think you two summed it up nicely.
Thanks, Tanner. All right, so moving on. I think this was when Scout was talking to Mrs. Motti. He was, again, their neighbor across the street or whatever. And Scout was having this discussion about kind of what Atticus was talented or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Because Jim and Scout were asking her, because they were like,
oh, this
he
was
doesn't
after
really seem to
he
have-
shot the dog, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then Miss Motti says this line: "People in their right minds never take pride in their talents." Is this true? Is this a good rule to follow?
Tanner, Isaiah, y'all go first.
Yeah, I guess that's true for... I guess I kind of agree with that, but then kind of don't, because... Well, it all depends on how you look at things. You can determine that somebody that does take pride in their talents is not in their right mind. You can determine that, or she could be incorrect in saying that, and people in their right minds are just incorrect in their thinking. That sounded backwards.
Yeah. People in their right minds do take pride in their talents, but I think what she's saying is that sometimes even the best at what they do are always the most humble.
That's what she meant. She was talking about being humble and being lowly.
Exactly.
She wasn't talking about literally not taking pride in it. Like, in your own mind, you can be
satisfied.
grateful.
Yeah.
You can be satisfied, grateful, thankful, happy that you're able to do this, but she just meant going around parading about it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's why he hadn't shot a gun in so long.
Yeah, exactly. I think that the best artists, I guess you could say, or even the best artists as in like what they do, are always the ones who are really just the humble craftsmen who are just trying to get better at what they do, understanding they can never be perfect at what they do.
Right. Well, understanding there's always, you can be the best, but there's still always room for improvement.
Right, exactly. That's why they're always
There's
the
always
best.
another step to take.
Right, they're always the best writers. They're always the best songwriters. They're always the best at what they do. They just have an understanding, and they have this respect for what they do and not how they do it.
Right.
All right, anything else to say?
Isaiah, you have any of your own words to say on that?
I mean, I guess just like agree with you guys, like what you were saying, like even though you could be the best at, let's say, I don't know, singing, you could be the best at everyone at singing, but you might not have it perfected or anything. So there's always something else to learn, and don't go around parading like, oh, I'm the best at singing, but not practicing or anything. Like you still always need to keep practicing and learning.
Just, keep grinding.
Tanner, what do you think?
Yeah, I wasted all my words a minute ago, and you guys took them all away and translated them. So thank you for that. That's just about my only thoughts.
Wow.
All right, so let's move on a little bit. Let's talk about Mrs. Gerbose, who's that lady who is supposedly on drugs or something like that.
You want me to explain this little part?
Yeah, sure. Cause I'm always really confused.
Yeah. So like we've talked about before in other episodes, this book is like kind of like a lot of little different stories. Almost every chapter, maybe every other chapter, is kind of a new story. And so I can't remember if this is. No, this is right after Atticus takes the case, but the court scene hasn't happened yet or any of that. It's just while you know that little part is going on, and then this is this is the part that kind of explains the kind of hate that their family, the Finches, are receiving from everyone else in the town. So specifically, they walk back to and from school taking the shorter route. It saves them like a mile every day, and so. They take the shorter route, but it's through like this old lady's property, and she gets very mad at them and just like whenever they're walking past, just starts yelling insults at them, mostly about their dad, while they're walking past. So usually like they'll try to ignore her insults, but one day she just keeps ranting on and on about how much she hates Atticus because he shouldn't be defending Tom Robinson, the black guy, and all this stuff, and Jim just can't control himself anymore. So he goes and like breaks some stuff in her yard, and he tears up some flowers, some of her like prized flowers that she loves to take care of. And so then they end up having to go work for a while. And you want me to stop here? Is that where you're getting to?
No, go ahead. You can finish.
Okay, so then they get mad. He gets mad, and then he takes Scout back home, and Atticus finds out about all this, and so he addresses Jim and tells him to go over there and apologize, and then to do whatever she asks him to make up for it. And so that's what he does, and then she asks him to come over and read to her for like 2 hours every day after school. So and then Scout decides to go with him and hear the story and just like go by his side, I guess.
Yeah.
And so they do that, and they end up changing her, kind of.
Yeah. So basically, the reason that Jim did what Matthew said, did you already say it? That she called Atticus.
Yeah.
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 So essentially, she said, she called Atticus whatever for defending Tom Robinson, and Jim gets, righteously mad, I guess, but not really. But then at the end of the chapter, Mrs. Dubose dies, right? And Atticus says she was the bravest person ever knew because she conquered her addiction or whatever and died clear, right?
Which is what they helped her with by reading to her. It made her more and more like stable every day, I guess, by like her looking forward to that. Or it was a interesting like little mental thing she had, but yeah, basically they kind of helped free her from her addiction before she died. So she died a clean death.
Right. So do you think that if you were Atticus, you would call Mrs. Dubose the bravest person that you ever met?
No.
No.
Well, why?
Well, I mean, she's like always on drugs and all that. She had a big addiction and everything. And basically, that's like all she did, I guess.
I don't really know how the word brave fits her at all.
Yeah.
Like even though she did overcome her addictions towards the end, I don't know how that's necessarily brave. I mean, it's strong-willed maybe if that, because it wasn't entirely her doing. It was also she was helped by other people, but
Yeah.
I mean, some other word would describe it better, I feel like. Plus, even just in the story, like I feel like you see braver people than her. For example, Tom Robinson, even though he is like scared of
Well, I mean,
like
at the end,
he
you
does
could make an
yeah, he
argument.
does get scared. Yeah.
Yeah.
He does get scared when he's in prison, but he was brave for a good while.
Did your perspective of Mr. DeBose ever change throughout the story?
No, honestly not. I never liked her.
That's funny.
Same. Never liked her. Period. All there is to say about that.
Even throughout the 2 times that I've read this, I've always been like, so we're supposed to, like, call. I mean, like,
Yeah.
in some small way, I guess I would, my perspective would be changed. But she was always really a salty old lady. No offense to.
Right. And like even when you find out that she was like on drugs or whatever problem she had.
And again,
Uh,
guys, another warning. Sorry, it's kind of late, but these episodes may contain a little bit of more
We
mature
said
content.
that.
We
We said
did,
that.
but
Yeah, on
just-
part 3, we're saying this.
Yeah, I know. I
Uh,
just just
yeah.
kind of clarifying.
Cooper's very concerned. Thank you, Cooper. But yeah, I lost what I was saying.
All right, Tanner, I want to hear your thoughts on this before I move on.
Yeah, she was definitely not my favorite character in this book. I don't think she's supposed to be your favorite character in this book, which is why I feel justified in my actions. Jim's response to her was definitely not right. He should have kept level-headed and not been, I don't know, so aggravated at that. I'm not saying that I wouldn't be aggravated, but in an idealistic world, he shouldn't have been. Mrs. DeBose was definitely not being kind in any way, or let's say this, encouraging. But
Yeah.
but Jim definitely should have kept being kind to her and not blown his top.
So, if you guys think that Mrs. DeBose kind of wasn't what Harper Lee intended her to be, if that's what you guys mean, then why do you think Harper Lee wrote this character?
I guess just to progress the story of Scout and Jim and their learning experience from it. Like they learned several things I'd say that. Well, like the main one would probably be you don't know everything about a person or why they're acting the way that they are. So, like I like how Tanner brought up about Jim actually being at fault too, because that's true, and we hadn't said that. But like, even if someone's openly, verbally criticizing someone you love or care about, or something you love or care about, like technically they live in America, so she has freedom of speech anyway, but you can't just rage and go yeah, you can't go destroy her property over it. So that was wrong, I think, and I think he learned not to do that again, because that was one of those times that his father treated him like a young immature boy after that action. So I think that hit him very hard right away, and I think he learned from that. But yeah, just like them learning from that point that maybe they should think about. I think it actually says something like Scout actually thinks this in the book, is that like maybe you should look at it, situations from other people's perspectives.
Yeah, that was one of the lessons they learned throughout the whole book.
Yeah, it's one of the main lines, like never judge something about a person until you've gotten their shoes and walked around in them or something like that.
Yeah. That's the quote I was thinking.
I loved that quote.
I think that was like the biggest lesson because they're learning that throughout the entire book.
Right.
There were like 5 lessons, but the rest of them are just like sections in the book.
Right, and they really learned that lesson multiple times, but this was one of the bigger-ish times, I guess.
And I remember
Yeah.
earlier in the book, kind of right around where we first learned about the trial and Tom Robinson. Scout is fighting the boy at school. His name Cecil Jacobs or something, and Atticus tells tells her not to get in fights over it or stuff like that.
Yeah. You sometimes forget that Scout's a girl, don't you?
Well, sure, why not? But yeah, and I guess Atticus just, he wanted to be able to hold up his head, by himself, and he wanted to do it nobly. So yeah. Anyway, so we could have talked about this a little earlier. We're talking about it now. Again, another warning. Young listener caution here. Okay. Um, so I guess this is the part where Scout is asking. Yeah, we're getting into more of the trial stuff, and Scout is asking like what her father like what rape is, and then earlier on, like where she says something to Francis, and then she asks Uncle Jack like what does it mean, and then Uncle Jack goes on like this long rambling trail about like what it's not or something like that. So do you think that parents should always answer their kids' questions no matter what? And if not, where should they draw the line?
I think that parents shouldn't be dishonest. So even if they have to say, I'm not going to tell you this right now because I don't think you're old enough to understand it, and I think that you may, whatever it may be, take it the wrong way, whatever. Then they'll honestly either, like, I mean, I guess if you're a parent, you don't have to give a reason, but I think like if you can give just like a little bit of understanding to know, so that they know that like you care enough about them to make sure that they find out what they need to find out when they need to find it out, then I think that would be the best way to handle it. Or if even if it's something awkward that you didn't really want to talk to them
Probably
about,
like in this instance.
yeah, and there's no reason really not to. It's not like they're gonna take it the wrong way or they're not old enough or anything. Then you're probably just gonna have to do it, because you can't just. I don't think you should just lie and then just make something up.
Mm-hmm.
So in short, you're kind of doing like don't be dishonest to them, but kind of know if they're too young or not.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying, even if you're not going to tell them, don't be dishonest about it. Just straight up say, I'm not going to tell you, and because you're not old enough.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, no matter what, tell them or not tell them, just don't be dishonest.
Yeah, and trust me,
That's what
they
I'm
probably
saying.
would have. They'll probably forget that in a few hours, if.
Right. Yeah. But what you were talking about Uncle Jack, because the first little part related to that in the book did have to do with Uncle Jack, and she asked him, I can't remember exactly what, but something related to that, and he's like, I think I'll let your dad explain that one to you or something.
No. He
So,
he told her about like this lord who lived in this like, council.
oh, that's right.
That's a
Yeah,
long
he did
random
just make
story.
up like a whole story.
But I think Scout.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about this when Scout asked Jim, what rape is, and then he's like, ask
Yeah.
Atticus.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Ask your father.
Ask your dad. All right, Tanner. Isaiah, anything to say about this?
No, not really. I mean, Matthew definitely had a point, like, never specifically lie to them on, like, premise. You can definitely tell them that something about it because, so, let's see, how do I phrase this? I have, we're going to assume that no young children are listening to this. I have
Okay,
never,
yeah. Warning.
I've never believed in Santa Claus, okay? And my parents have this theory.
Oh, okay, that's where you're going. I was like, I'm getting kind of scared, and then you're like, Santa Claus. Okay, well, we're all good. We're all good.
Yeah, I thought you were going somewhere else.
But no, there's a big point behind this, okay? The marriage counselors told my parents that if they lied to me about Santa Claus, why should I believe in Jesus?
Right.
And that's really a valid point. You shouldn't lie to your kids about something insignificant like Santa Claus, and you shouldn't lie to them about something significant like raping, because if you lie to them, when are they going to believe you again? You have to gain that trust back. You've just eroded years of trust, like
Exactly.
everything. They don't know what to believe anymore. So the point you
That's a valid point.
really don't want to lie to your kids about something insignificant or significant. It's part of the reason why lying is so bad. You just don't, because after you do it, it takes forever to gain the trust back that you've just lost through the lies that you've instated.
Hashtag the plot of like billions of novels. Anyway, let's talk about one more thing before we end this episode. So, the jail scene right before the trial, where Jim, Dill, and Scout all go up to see Atticus at the jail. And basically, a lynch mob comes up and, well, wants to lynch Atticus. And Scout essentially turns down the whole mob by focusing on one person. So I hate to be this general, but what did you guys think
this part.
about that scene?
I think I just said I loved that scene because it was like it was very serious at first, and for several reasons. One, because Atticus was being very like suspicious, kind of just sitting outside of a jail in the middle of the night. Two, the kids followed them after they were specifically told not to, and also there was a mob, like you said, trying to get Atticus. So, for those reasons, it seemed pretty serious. But then after you left the scene and towards the end of the chapter, it was almost a little bit amusing, just because the little girl who wasn't supposed to be there got lucky, like that she said the things that she said to Mr. Cunningham, and then it all just worked out because of that. It was pretty funny.
There's a quote in this, and it says, "A mob is always made up of people." Do you guys agree with that, or do you guys want to unpack that real quick?
A mob is a group of individual people who each have their own individual beliefs, and at that moment when they're a mob, they all happen to believe the same thing or want the same thing, whether or not it's for the same reason. You know, like you'll see on movies, especially like spy movies or different things, where like there's a lot of side trading and people have different angles the whole time, and everyone wants something different, but like every now and then, or actually pretty often, but like, you know what I mean? Like every now and then two people who want different things are united because the way to get to those things are the same. So they work together for that little part until someone's priorities change or something changes and it causes people to shift around. And it's like, that's kind of how it is. I guess that's kind of what I thought of when I heard that quote. The way that I did, I guess, it's just like that just talking to them can change their minds kind of.
Right, is it Tanner anything to say before we go to dinner shoutouts?
Yes. So I said in the first episode that my mom quoted Atticus Finch a lot, and there was another quote that she used, and I love this quote. It was, I believe, by Miss Molly, when she says that Atticus Finch is the same man inside the house as he is outside the house. And I believe that's a great, that's kind of the reason that we're on this podcast. Like, we're trying to show that we are the same people in this podcast as we are outside of this podcast. We definitely are not having the same conversations that we'd have if we were not doing this podcast. Sure. I will tell you listeners that.
And be sure they don't talk as eloquently as we do one here.
Or try to be as eloquent as we try to do. Not saying that we are, because I doubt that we actually are.
Okay, who's humble now, Cooper? Yeah, no, Tanner, he's being serious, Cooper. Yeah, that's a really good point, Tanner. Thanks for bringing that up. I love that quote. That he's like, that's probably the best descriptive line of Atticus that like really helps the reader get to know him out of the whole book. I'd say of Atticus is just he's the same man in and out of the house.
All right. And speaking of inside the house, let's give some donor shout-outs to people who were on the inside group of our supporters, and that was really bad, but I'm going to keep it in. So, let's do some donor shout-outs. Tanner, what would someone want to do if they wanted a donor shout-out?
They would go to patreon.com/bookin it and give, any of our $5 and up tiers, and then if they are not able to, they would subscribe to us and give us a 5-star rating on their favorite podcasting app.
That's right. Let's do some donor shout-outs. since we're short on time, I guess we'll just say the names. So, Matthew, Nana, Isaiah, Van Pappy and Wayla.
Van Pepe and Wayla.
Be like more excited, guys. Tanner, Isaiah's grandparents.
Isaiah's grandparents.
Matthew, Isaiah's sister Becky.
Becky.
All right, Isaiah, your uncle Sebi.
Yes, Sebby.
Tanner, Isaiah's aunt and uncle Jenny and Uncle Sam.
Isaiah's aunt and uncle Jenny and Sam.
Oh yeah, I kind of butchered that. All right,
Nice.
Matthew, Isaiah's cousins,
Moses and Zara.
and finally Isaiah, Chris.
Thank you, Chris. And don't forget to go listen to this podcast like lightning.
That's right. That's right. Just a reminder, no new episode of Bookin It next week, but make sure to check out our brand new podcast, The Screening, where we talk about movies. We're going to be talking about To Kill a Mockingbird, the movie. So make sure you go check that out next week, and we'll be back in 2 weeks with the finale to our Killing Mockingbird series. So, until next time.
Keep on booking it.